What is something that sounds extremely wrong but is actually correct? Children are statistically less likely to develop autism. You have to be alive to develop autism. Edit. For the sake of clarity, unvaccinated children are not guaranteed to die of a preventable disease. I am arguing they are more likely to die than a vaccinated child. I am also not arguing it isn't present from birth, but instead it would not have a chance to develop if they are dead. I was almost marginally triggered. Well done. Clever. But since autism is something you are generally born with, it still is factually inaccurate. It has black skin, and its fur is clear. If you look closely at polar bear fur, you also drastically reduce your lifespan. You can also pet them, but only once. Polar bears and brown bears are often considered different species, but polar bears are actually a relatively new subspecies of brown bears, and the two can interbreed and produce fertile offspring. Also, mules can very rarely produce foals.
This video is brought to you by Fiverr, the biggest, most affordable, and overall the best freelance website there is. It's a place where you can hire anyone from writers to designers and everyone in between for as little as $5. It's absolutely the best place to save time and money for your projects. But if you want to take your business a step further, we would highly recommend Fiverr Pro, a place where you can work with verified, hand-vetted, exceptionally talented professionals that have, with their work for companies like Google or Apple, proven to be the best in their category. Link in the description below.
Unicorn is actually the national animal of Scotland. Did you know that William Wallace drank from the breast of a unicorn? Unicorn milk. Those were William Wallace's last words. But the movie producers thought that viewers would be confused by that, so they changed it to freedom. It was either that or adding a unicorn breastfeeding scene at the beginning of the movie. Unicorns have breasts? What is this, anime? An average longer lifespan than non-smokers, because most smokers are 18 and over, and most children that die are non-smokers, lowering the average lifespan. Gotta get more sick kids smoking. This one pretty sick kid should also drive lifted truck and drink Monster Energy drink. Is that sick enough? You either die a non-smoker or live long enough to be given an option to become a smoker. Started up in 1889. Kinda makes sense why people would think it sounds wrong though. They're pretty much only known nowadays for their games consoles. Nokia was founded even earlier, 1865, and was involved in paper, wood and rubber industries among others. The Ottoman Empire still existed back then too. Imagine a whole empire based on putting your feet up. The answer to this is, the last execution by guillotine in France occurred the same year Star Wars was released. 1977 was a lovely year. Not for that one guy though. Wait, did he get to see it first? Orange was named after the fruit. Yo, what should we call these round, sweet things? IDK, oranges. Cool, now what do we call this new color that's made by mixing red and yellow? Hey, that's the same color as oranges. Orange it is. Row, inventing English is fun. Before that, orange was referred to as red, probably in much the same way as a lot of people would call things like burgundy red or aqua blue. I'm imagining that's why people with orange hair are known as redheads. It was also called yellow red or red yellow in a lot of languages, and fire yellow in Swedish, using the word for fire that specifically refers to a larger fire in a building, forest, etc. President John Tyler, president from 1841 until 1845, still has living grandchildren. Closest US state to Africa. I bless the mains down in Africa. I recently found out that Toto is not the name of a single black man, but the name for the band of a group of white dudes. There was some place, I can't remember where, but some city in Africa that for much of the year is colder than New York. I think the reason was elevation. Fingers is a dominant trait in a Punnett square model. I just learned that in class the other day. Being a midget is also dominant. So, is the reason we're not all six-fingered little people because of sexual selection? 2 copies of the achondroplasia, dwarfism, gene is lethal. That's why that is unlikely to become a common trait. Ferrets can actually die from not having enough sex. Today I learned I'm a female ferret. It's not from not having enough sex. It's if a female goes into heat and doesn't mate, it will kill her. Bleeds to death. It's bizarre. ETA. I was wrong. They get estrogen poisoning and develop aplastic anemia. So it is blood based, but not bleeding. Santa Claus is accompanied not by elves, but by somewhere between 6 and 8 black men. Ha 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 ha, I know. I'm Dutch and they're called Zwartpieten. Is it true that they used to be slaves, but now they're just good friends? Plot twist. It's actually an inner city basketball team that Santa hired to dunk presents down the chimney. To 2040 than we are to 1995. La 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 la, I can't hear your lies. People born in January 2000 are legally adults. This is what I meant to say, but I ucked up the phrasing. Shit, that just made me realize. On the 31st of December, 2017, every person over 18 in the world would have been born in the second millennium, whereas every under 18 would have been born in the third millennium. 2 hands? Congrats, you're above average. Don't forget about your legs. I don't have hands on my legs. Berries and raspberries aren't really berries, but bananas are. Along the same lines, peanuts aren't a nut. Also sperm, but people make that mistake all the time. On the contrary, snozzberries really do taste like snozzberries. Alaska is the most northern, western, and eastern state in the US because one of its islands stretch across the line into the eastern hemisphere. Greenland is both north, south, east and west of Iceland. I heard someone say Borton as a past tense variable of to buy. I nearly flipped my shit, thinking there was no way. Apparently, way. Edit. There's been some discussion whether it is a verb or rather an adjective. From what I found from googling, it functions as both. Formed from the past tense of buy, the word Borton takes bought and adds an, just as hidden comes from hid, the past tense of hide, and like hidden. Borton has 2 functions, adjective and verb form. In the Little House on the Prairie books, the word Borton is used a few times, as in Borton broom. For the longest time I thought Borton was some kind of material the stuff was made out of. Edit. This is now my highest rated comment on Reddit. Thanks. I hate it. Also, for context, I got most of the books when I was very young, between about 4 and 7, and this was back in the 80s before Google existed. English is fucking weird. English is 3 languages stacked on top of one another in a trench coat trying to function as a real adult. It has more meanings than any other word, over 400 uses. Yep, there's actually a whole branch of linguistics dedicated to studying that. We call it set theory. That's for the tag-along thread. What sounds extremely correct but is actually wrong. WowieDictionary.com link. His word for lemon is remin. Before you call me racist, ask Google. Priest 1 remin. There's a long list of Japanese words that were adopted from English that just sound like someone doing a racist Japanese impression. Colorado. People is 12 people. Or 1 up's mom. That was a nasty crack. Speaking of nasty cracks, how's your mom? Or 8 if you're American. Power is safer and cleaner than any other source of energy generation mankind has ever made, and by a wide margin. Even more so than solar or wind. I know that most energy sources are polluting, but I've always seen solar and wind as the perfect utopian compatible energy source. Correct. Solar produces roughly 40 GCO2/kWh of energy, because it is more material intensive than nuclear for a given amount of power generation. You need roughly 20 square kilometers. That's 20 million square meters of solar panels to generate the same energy as a 2 GW electric plant. Wind does better, with a median of 11 GCO2/kWh versus nuclear's 12 GCO2/kWh median. However, nuclear's minimum CO2 footprint is only 3.7 GCO2/kWh, against wind's 7 GKWh. Nuclear's median value is due to us running mostly 40-year-old reactors with 50-60-year-old designs, in inefficient configurations, compared against present-day tech for wind power. Were we to start building new nuclear plants en masse, the CO2 footprint would be closer to the present day minimum than the present day median. Hydropower has the lowest CO2 footprint of them all, median of 24 GkWh, but minimum of 1 GkWh. Hydropower is really quite good, we should use it wherever we can. It's just not scalable because it's geographically limited and we've already dammed up most of the places it makes sense to. Plus there are non-CO2 related ecological impacts, of course. Solar and wind can't fail as catastrophically as some other power sources, so people don't notice. Hydropower also does worse than nuclear. Actually it's very similar to nuclear. Powerful, clean, reliable energy, with rare but catastrophic failure modes. The worst dam burst occurred in China and killed over 22,000 people, and dams breaking are actually not nearly as uncommon as nuclear accidents. Nuclear power has had 3 major accidents: 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and Fukushima. The first had 0 deaths, the second had 4,000 deaths, the third had essentially no deaths, although you could argue a number up to perhaps 50 people amid a tsunami disaster that killed 15,000. It's interesting that you say that Fukushima Daiichi to be a nuclear accident. I have always regarded it to be more of a natural disaster. What caused the reactors to shut down was the earthquake and the following tsunami, and even then it went through the shutdown in case of disaster process as it should have. I think it's formidable that the damage in Daiichi was still so limited from how bad it could have been. I don't know enough about 3 Miles Island. That's from before my time in the other part of the world. Chernobyl is something that should never have happened. It was a combination of idiot management and lack of naysaying by the workers involved. They were going to test something purposefully, having shut down majority of the safety mechanisms a nuclear power plant has. I still find it rather fascinating how now, more than 30 years later, Mother Nature has reclaimed the ground there. It's a cruel yet beautiful reminder that if you mess with safety, it can and will go horribly wrong. At the same time, Chernobyl caused a significant tightening on the security rules regarding power plants. Sometimes accidents are needed for improvement. Best comment of the day. Despite eye color being the thing we were all taught to do Punnett squares on, eye color can't actually be computed way. It's a polygenic trait and there are even recessive genes for brown eyes and dominant genes for blue. Due to the insane amount of genes that code for eye color, it's entirely possible to have an eye color not seen in your bloodline in generations, or get a combination from your parents that gets you an eye color no one in your family has ever had. We've known this since the 80s, but continue to teach it incorrectly because it's such a commonly held belief that students understand the example more easily. This infuriates me.